Well, less than 2 hours after Colton Burpo was wheeled away for surgery, he was awake and alive. At that moment, Colton told his father that he almost died. 4 months later, Colton told his father the rest of the story, and we're going to get the rest of the story. What was the first thing that got you going, Todd, that something significant happened?
Well, when we were driving back through North Platte, we finally had maybe healed from the experience enough to kind of joke about it. We said, Colton, do you want to go back to the hospital? And he goes, oh no, send Cassie. You know, he offered up his big sister pretty quick, which we expected that. But he said, but Dad, you know, while I was there, the angels sang to me. And angels are not something that we discuss very often. Now, we have Bible stories in church, read Bible lessons. We talk about Jesus all the time. But angels, that totally was a very rarely talked about subject. You talk about angels maybe at Christmas time, the nativity story, but when he said they sang to him and he was very definite, that's what captured our attention, and we're like, okay, what did we miss? And then he said, well, Dad, you know, Jesus had the angels sing to me. And then when we asked him, well, where was Jesus? He's like, well, Dad, I was sitting on his lap. And that's where I was shocked. I'm like, well, how do you know that? And then when he started saying, well, Dad, I could see you, and then he started taking over the conversation. And then he talked to me about me being in that room all by myself. My wife at that moment didn't know where I was. Matter of fact, I'd slipped away. And when I came back to her and brought my stuff back, she was mad at me, like, where have you been? I've been out here all by myself. You haven't been around me. And her cell phone battery was about out, so can I use your phone? I never told her where I was. You don't brag about prayers like that, even to your wife. And then all of a sudden, here's my son. Dad, I saw you.
Yeah, I saw you. And it was that desperate prayer.
It was.
When did you figure out that this wasn't just Jesus coming into the hospital room?
Well,
but this was something a whole lot more.
This is about a week later. We went to the trip to Sonia's brother's house. Then we come back, and I wanted to go there because when he said he saw Jesus, you know, it was just burning in my mind. What did he look like? And so I started asking some questions. And again, Colton's a typical boy. Sometimes he wants to talk, sometimes he wants to play, but then all of a sudden he would just take over. I said, Colton, remember you said you saw Jesus? He goes, yeah. And all of a sudden he looks up at me and says, Dad, do you know Jesus' cousin baptized him? I go, well, yeah. Well, I saw him and he's really nice. And then, do you know Jesus has a horse? And then he starts going on, and pretty soon this conversation just took off before I knew it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, you said you were in the hospital with Jesus, and wait a minute, did you go to heaven? He's like, oh yeah, I did, Dad. And that's when I first dawned on me that that's what happened.
And I imagine a whole bunch of biblical passages started popping into your mind with each one of his statements. You're going,
oh yeah,
how would he know that?
Exactly, and he would confirm stuff, you know, and being a pastor and knowing what was in the Bible and knowing what my preschool curriculum teaches and how he was going so much further beyond that, you're just like, okay, this didn't come from home, this didn't come from church, and it obviously came from something he experienced.
Well, Colton, something else came where you met a sister you had never met before. Tell us about that.
Well, she actually met me at the gates of heaven. She just ran out and hugged me. At first I was like, who are you? And then she told me who she was. But back when I was 3, I didn't like hugs, so...
Do you like hugs today?
Kind of grown into it more, but...
Not so much.
No.
Not so much. So she comes out and hugs you. How'd you know it was your sister?
Well, actually, she's the one that told me who she was. Mm-hmm. I had no idea who she was.
Who else did you meet?
I met my great-grandpa, Pop, and then I also met King David, Samson, the apostles Peter and John, and Mary.
Wow. You got quite a tour. How long were you there?
Well, I'm not too sure how long, but when I came back to Earth, I told my dad I was up there for 3 minutes. There's no way I could have saw that in 3 minutes.
So time sort of changes.
Yeah.
You know, the time that's passing here in a hospital room is different than the time that's passing in heaven.
Yeah.
Sonia, let me ask you, who is this sister?
Between Cassie and Colton, we miscarried a baby. We didn't know it was daughter. We hadn't told the kids because how do you tell anybody you had a miscarriage? You don't wear a T-shirt that said I just had a miscarriage. And so when he told us that he had 2 sisters, it gave us such a healing. We thought we'd gotten over it, but we still had that hurt. And this has provided some healing and some, she's okay, and it's a she.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's ever anything you get over. My mother miscarried before me, and actually had gotten to the point where they had named the baby.
Yeah.
Curiously, if there hadn't been a miscarriage, I wouldn't be here. So I'm really encouraged that I'm going to meet James Gordon one day. And
at the gate.
At the gate. He's going to come out and give me a hug, which is really nice.
Yeah.
What did Pop look like?
Well, Pop, when I saw him, he was a young man in his late 20s, early 30s. That's what everybody looks like in heaven. But
I'm liking that.
Yeah. So you look like your young self.
But you met children too.
Yeah.
You know, are they going to grow older? Are they?
Yes, like if you were miscarried or if you died as a kid, what you do is you will still grow to your prime. But then once you hit your late 20s, early 30s, you stop and you stay at that age.
Okay. Todd, how did you know he had actually met Pop?
Well, I would take Pop, you know, when I was a little kid, we were so close. He started telling me about things I did with Pop when I was a kid and how nice Pop was. But when he could talk about things I did with Pop, I was like, how do you know that? Well, Pop told me. So I'd take him to pictures because I wanted to get a description of Pop, and he couldn't recognize him as the Pop that I knew at 61. But it finally dawned on me with the descriptions he gave us of his sister, how she looked a lot like Cassie, but not quite as big. It was like, well, that's what I'd expect her to look like this side of heaven, except with wings. But so eventually I said, okay, Mom, do you happen to have a picture of Pop as a young man? So she sent me one, and this took a while to get it. I just hand Colton the picture. And I had never at any time, had he ever seen this. This picture was one that was put up in a closet before he was born. And I just said, Colton, take a look at this. And it's a family picture. We have it in the book. And without even hesitating, Colton just stops and goes, hey, how did you get a picture of Pop? Right off, just like that. Huh. Now, there's no drugs, no teacher, nothing that could have spurred that memory. The only thing that could have answered it is he saw him.
Wow. It's an incredible story. I can talk a long time, but we're out of time. I want to encourage you, though, if you want more, there's wonderful books available where you can get the complete story. Todd Burpo, Heaven is for Real. It's now out in paperback. And then there's a follow-on, Heaven Changes Everything, where you get more of Sonia's story, and it's a daily devotional. The Burpos also share their story with us on our website, and you can watch that or share it with your friends. All you have to do is go to cbn.com. And while there, we have a special behind-the-scenes interview with them. You can always watch that by clicking on the link called In the Green Room. Well, Colton, Sonia, Todd, thanks. Thanks for your story.
Thank you.
All right. God bless you. Terry, over to you.